Well, hello there, and welcome to the bathroom of the dollhouse for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Used Elfers for April 14th, the day of tradition. That's right. And here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of tradition. We have what appears to be, what could it be? Let me see if I can get it in frame here. Oh, focus, will you? There it is. It looks to be a deer head with a crown as the collar and a little bit of a leash coming off of it there. Now, does that speak to the day of tradition? Hey, who's to say? A lot of the times these images are a little bit enigmatic. It's hard to make hide nor hair of why they might have chosen. But that said, hey, maybe it's a little traditional to leash a deer with a collar that's a crown. I don't know, maybe. But that said, not altogether all too important. Maybe we'll make some kind of connotations we don't have to read. We'll just have to see. That said, what is important around these here parts is if it's April 14th and it's your birthday today, wishing you a happy birthday. So, happy birthday. That said, sometimes these videos find folks late or they're coming to it early. And if that's the case, well, I hope you have and had a happy birthday, depending upon which it is. That said, other times folks just like to join us to celebrate or find out more. And if that's the case, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I dive in with the redirect, something I like to do around these here parts, and that is roll some dice. That's right, this is the Diecast birthday broadcast, so I like to live up to the namesake. But if you've been here before, you know what's going on, or you just want to get into the redirect, hey, jump ahead in the chapters. That's what they're there for. I'll be here rolling dice because I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And that was more of a drop. Let's get it rolled here. There it is. Oh, there we go. That one's better. What do we got? Boom. Doubles. Snake eyes, if you like. Don't often roll that one. But that said, what is synchronicity? You're probably wondering. Well, my friends, as I hear it told, the universe or the higher powers that be, if you like, will oftentimes put things in our path to help us manifest our goals or realize our aspirations. But a lot of the time, getting through this life, we got the blinders on to what's going on around us. We're very singular or narrow focus, just looking at what's ahead or what's on our what our goals are insofar as getting to work, doing the errands and the like. We might just so happen to miss the things that come into our path that the universe is trying to get us to recognize. Now, how do we recognize those things? Well, we need a little bit of a signpost, if you like, something to recognize that's mutually agreed upon between us and the universe. That's right. What could it be? Boom, your daily numbers, your 1 and your 1 for a 2 or maybe an 11, something like that, something that grabs your attention. So, and then you guys have, you and the universe have agreed upon it there. That said, you don't have to go with what I rolled for you. The intention is there. But if you do want to try this out, behooves of you to probably get your own set of dice, all right? So that you can ascribe directional values to number sets, say north 1 through 3, east being 4 through 6, and so on. And you can also really get down to the nitty gritty with it. Say yeses and nos for evens and odds, or left and right for evens, odds. And then you use the dice for time limits with which to go in those directions. And so once you have all that nailed down, pick a place out that's near and dear to your heart, or maybe some place you haven't explored before, and then set out. But like I said, get those blinders off because you never know what might cross your path. The day might start to take on a little bit of a theme outside of looking for your daily numbers, all right? Take the deer with the collar. Hey, maybe you see animals you wouldn't have anticipated out there in the wild with collars on or people walking them. I don't know, maybe you see somebody, some Salvador Dali type walking an ocelot, all right? A little wildcat with the leopard spots. Like, that's kind of crazy. Hey, I would take that as a sign because it might start creeping up. Somebody walking a goat, who's to say? It could be just about anything. Someone with a really big choker that looks almost like a crown. I don't know. That said, it could be stuff that's not real necessarily or tangible, like an ad on the side of a bus bench or a billboard. Like I said, those are just things to let you know that the universe is showing you you're on the right path. Who's to say? Maybe you don't see much of anything when you get out there. That said, never fret. Just take your time when you're at the end of your time limit. Look around, see what you see. Hey, maybe no sooner you go roll your dice, somebody stops, looks, wonders why you're shooting craps on the side of the street by yourself. Hey, just tell them what's going on. It's your birthday. You're out here to try to shake things up a little bit, see what's interesting. And they're apt to tell you that's crazy, right? And you say, hey, it's just this dude on the internet doing this and that. And they go, no, not that. It's my birthday too. All right. Hey, maybe so. That seems a little random, but you never know. Maybe the universe was setting that up, which is great because as I hear it told, the more people who are focused on the same results, something crazy, the universe working in these ways, you're apt to beget greater results. So I think you get the idea. Keep your eyes out for interesting things, your numbers, all right? Be open to the universe showing you interesting little things, and you have to see them, all right? So if you see, taste, touch, smell, or even intuit, just a little bit of that magic, I think you'll see why I brought it up for you. That said, it's your birthday. Let's get on with the read. That's why you're here. Your month is April. Your day is the 14th. Your sign is 23 to 25 degrees Aries of the Aries III period specifically. And your quality and element is Cardinal fire. All right, April 14th, the day of tradition. April 14 people have a great sense of tradition. Often students of history, whether general history or that of a particular field or family, they are interested in establishing themselves in a long line of thinkers and doers. And those born on this day are very concerned with finding their proper place in society. Often this place is at the head of a group, although they rarely have outstanding leadership abilities. It is more possible that simply through their presence or image, a strong respect, worship, or even fear is inspired in those around them. The more highly evolved of April 14 people need only be respected, whereas the less highly evolved, more insecure April 14 people wish to be worshipped and obeyed. These latter people must beware of being carried away by their ideas and indulging in underhanded, highly dubious behavior in order to achieve their ends. And not only do those born on this day see themselves in the light of history, but they also have a firm grasp on the times in which they live. April 14 people often have a remarkable insight into how their occupation and those of others have progressed through time, and consequently, what the future may hold. These are not people who value change for its own sake. No, they tend to be extremely conservative. Even revolutionary personalities born on this day may found their rebellion on what they feel are traditional values. All too often, an April 14 son rebels against his father, only to institute his own rigid idea system once he assumes the role of father himself. Women born on April 14 have a very strong feeling for family, and although they are not necessarily domestic types, and many want their families to be understanding of their need to pursue a career, and at the same time wish to reign as queen at home. Men born on April 14 can be exciting personalities, but often exercise excessive control over themselves and those around them. And indeed, the danger for April 14 personalities of both sexes is that they will become autocratic in their sphere of influence, dictating to their families, friends, and associates. April 14 people do well to establish themselves in stable work, family, or living situations as soon as possible. And they do not do well with experiments in lifestyle or with changes of occupation, and need to be firmly grounded before they can be productive. The best work for an April 14 person involves a series of projects in which he or she completes one and moves on to the next in an orderly, methodical manner. And in general, it is better if those born on this day do not suffer too much downtime between projects, which can engender restlessness and uncertainty. Learning to be patient with associates and be aware of the needs of family are the means by which April 14 people may avoid personal conflicts and unhappiness. Well, all right, pretty well-rounded birthday read, if I do say so myself. It's kind of interesting as this idea of tradition and a conservative nature, it doesn't pop up all that often. I'd say maybe once every period, to say each zodiac period, if even that. All right, so you got one of the traditional ones, interestingly enough. That said, I like to provide a little bit of a commentary, go over what we read, also things I find interesting, maybe compare and contrast things that have come up in recent days, and the Aries period writ large. Also the book writ large. So let's get into it, all right? April 14, the day of tradition. You're said to have great sense of tradition, all right? Often being students of history and interested in establishing yourself as a thinker and a doer. And Aries folks are doers for sure, so you have that in common with them. The reading also claims you're very concerned with finding your proper place in the society. And this is a bit of an Aries III property characteristic. A little bit Aries II, but they're really drilling down on it for the Aries III folks. The pioneers versus the stars. The Aries II folks had a lot of star power. Now, outside of this focus on tradition, right out the gate says you assume several hallmark Aries qualities, e.g., being a doer, like I said, but also inspiring worship and garnering the respect of others. And in no small part, being thrown into leadership roles. All right, now it doesn't say whether you like that or not, but if the autocratic thing's in there, hey, maybe you do. And I mention this because despite doing their best in the role, other Aries folks who were thrown into it, they don't particularly like it, all right? They would much prefer to be left to their chosen line of work, but they do their best when they're thrown into such situations. But let's see here. That aspect, though, has been seemingly missing to some extent the past few days, surprisingly. But the folks from yesterday, they actually have the quality, but they struggle to attain it, all right? They're a little too eclectic, or if you like. They're kind of at odds with society, even though they want to be a big part of it and have a commentary on it. And I mention that because it's interesting there's no bleed over here. You know, you would think that such a proximate day there might be. And in a lot of cases there are, but not here, all right? But I'd say both qualities seem to somewhat bleed through to today. Outside of that social aspect, when the desire to be, you kind of get it intrinsically. But the higher evolved only wish to be respected versus the lesser who can get carried away with chasing after it. And being a fixture of society, that's a little bit of a characteristic too. And things that have been coming up the past few days, as they say, to be in service of people versus chasing it for your own ends. And then you're apt to be getting the recognition you deserve, as long as you're in service to others. They say most folks who chase after it intentionally aren't apt to get it. And that's been happening not just this period, but Aries too as well. All right. Let's see, what else I have to say here. So it's very interesting they broach how you apply the sense of tradition for better or for worse as well. To that end, the book only occasionally gives such a trait, such a focused examination. And that also can be said for comparing women and men and how it affects them. That does come up occasionally, but not all that often. So I'm glad they threw it in there. But this claimed danger of being autocratic, also a little bit of an anomaly for the period. So maybe take note of that and pay heed. And for a period where even the most glowing and warm of individuals, they've how do I say this? Routinely. I think that's right. That sounds wrong. They routinely arouse antagonists. Okay, that's an Aries through theme for sure. Though it has seemed to be not getting much mention maybe the past week or so. So I would say be careful with the autocratic indulgences, because you know what, I would say that's one thing that's bound to get antagonists for sure. What's very interesting is Aries won almost every day. They were very warm people, and they attracted a lot of friendships, even though they weren't necessarily they didn't care too much about it. But they would also get a lot of antagonists simply because of that reason from my read. So that's why I bring up the antagonists. It was an Aries thing, at least at the top, for sure. And autocratic individuals, I think, would get them for more of the right reasons. People don't like you because you're a little bit too, you're whipping the whip too hard, or swinging it, however you get it. In any event, they also mention a stable work situation, and I think that kind of explains itself once we get into your numbers and your planets. That's right. Let's get into why you may like a stable work condition, and also why it's interesting. All right, here we go. Those born on the 14th day of the month are ruled by the number 5 and by the planet Mercury. The numbers 5 and Mercury both stand for change and indicate impatience for a plodding behavior. Coupled with the influence of Mars, which is the ruler of Aries, this suggests a need for forceful, even impulsive action. Consequently, typical April 14th people may become periodically dissatisfied with what they're doing, and even when things are going well. Fortunately, the number 5 bestows a resilient character and the capacity to recover quickly from the hard knocks of life. All right. little bit of a boilerplate read for a Mercury day, to be sure, and it also kind of contrasts with what we read in the breakdown. And that's why I think this is interesting. All right, let's dive into it. The number 5 in the speedy planet Mercury, standing for quickness of thought and change, and as usually outlined on other days for Mercury. So it makes sense that you'd be served by a stable, structured work ethic, all right, where downtime is kept at a minimum, and i.e. your patience for plodding behavior doesn't necessarily have to come to the fore and irritate you, all right? You keep going. And then considering Mars with its god of war-like energy and adventuresome ambition too, traditional restlessness may be engendered as Mars tends to bolster the energy of the planet that it rules with, if it's not an outright conflict, considering how Earth-based Mars is. All right, a lot of times this will come into conflict with a more easygoing, even-keeled natured planet like Jupiter, say, and a lot of conflict ensues. But Mars, like I said, tends to bolster things. But that sense of tradition is quality. Hey, that might manifest when change is Mercury's driver. A little bit of a conflict there, perhaps, because Mars has got that go ahead, go forward. But they said for you, change might be kind of a disruptor in a lot of cases. You like things to be straightforward and keep going through. And so that's kind of an anomaly for a Mercury day. So I found there to be a little bit of a ironic back and forth there with the Mercury versus what they said in the breakdown for you. But hey, perhaps Mars just gives a little bit more of a down-to-earth energy. As Aries whole, that has been an anomaly, and I can't really make heads or tails of it. The typical things that you would assume for a planetary influence, it's been kind of being in a bit of an upheaval every time we go into an Aries read. And I've just been calling it the Aries anomaly because you can't go in with your assumptions based on past tradition. Here I would say, though, yours does kind of come back more into what you would think. And so I kind of appreciate that. But there's still that little twist that makes it kind of interesting that you can't really explain it. Yesterday, surprisingly, and I hate to segue into this because it's not your birthday, but it was the one day you would assume things would be turned upside down because it was a Uranus day, and Uranus shakes things up. But it was the one day of the period that was as straightforward as you could get. So pretty interesting in that respect. But like I said, moving on here, if you do suffer being periodically dissatisfied with what you're doing, perhaps there's the reason why. All right, maybe there's too much change, you're moving too quickly, and or you aren't being too stable enough because they said you need a stable work environment. So maybe things are just getting a little too out of hand. Who's to say? A couple different things to think about. Unfortunately, it's not like you can drive into one avenue and go head forward. You got to consider both, it sounds like. Who's to say? Mercury, Mars, maybe not the best dynamic, though it might work great for you. All right. It's also just ironic that tradition comes into something for someone who's said to be driven by a planet that inspires change. All right. Contrary to tradition, I would say. But in any event, that's been your numbers and your planets. Maybe a little bit murky there with my points, but hopefully you understood. So let's move on to your tarot. That's right, one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies. Based here in the book, we can just see what it says and then move on. We don't have to take it home and start dealing the cards out and predicting our future or whatever. It's also kind of interesting because it sometimes serves as a metaphor for the day or seemingly informs what the birthday breakdown was all about. Not all the time, but sometimes. And it's not a pick your poison kind of deal. This goes through a numerical order type thing. And so, hey, we just got to see what we get and see if it lines up. So let's dive in. The 14th card of the major arcana is Temperance. The figure shown is a guardian angel who protects us and keeps us on an even keel. This is a wonderful message for April 14 people, if only they will heed it. Those born on this day should avoid all forms of egotistical excess, and positively seen, temperance allows us to modify our passions and thus learn new truths and incorporate them into our daily lives. And because some of the bad characteristics of the temperance card include inconsistency and trendiness, April 14th people should be careful of trying to adapt themselves too much to the current fashion or established tradition. in effect becoming too sociable at the expense of individual thoughts as well as feelings. Okay, right out the gate, temperance for a traditional individual. Very interesting. That said, this is one of the most highly personalized tarot entries I've seen in the book. More often than not, it's just a boilerplate breakdown, and they may once in a while tag it at the end to say why this serves to as an example or a metaphor. Here they really dove in with things for you, and I haven't seen that in a while. So hey, they personalize it for you. That's pretty cool. All right, let's see what I had to say here. Might have burned everything down. Temperance, a card warning to avoid egotistical excess so as to maintain an even keel. Hey, all right, right there. There you go. The tradition. All right. A bit of an outlier for an Aries if, in fact, you do lean into extremes. Okay, pretty interesting there. And this is also hinted at for in others when spits and spatters, but not too boldly emphasized. At least in terms of tradition. And I think I kind of mentioned that. Every period seems to get someone who's kind of traditional. And so this isn't necessarily the most unique thing in the world, all right? But it's not something that's all too common either, all right? So what else do we have here? I love that they took a moment to warn against adapting to trends and fashions, all right? That seems like great, advice for somebody who's got a traditional value type and an eye on history, if you like, in their place, that applying themselves to it. So you might be ostensibly going against your natural intrinsic abilities or traits or aspirations. And like I said, the tarot is seldom personalized, so I'd err on the side of that concern. At least try it out if you're interested in it. All right, don't lean into other people's trendy ideas. All right, you've probably got your own, and they're probably going to serve you better if you lean into those. But it also might come off rather fake if you try it, okay? And in addition to how that undercuts your truer self, hey, throw it right in the trash, I would say. You don't even have to think about it. Or maybe just try it out to see if it fails, all right? Hey, there's a good idea. Failure can be one of the best teachers, all right? Well, that might be interesting too. I don't think people normally lean into trying something to see if it fails, all right? Any event, or maybe you see it succeeds but with the people that you don't like. So that in itself kind of a failure. Who's to say? Any event, I'm getting long in the tooth, waxing poetic. That's been your tarot. Let's move on to your health. All right, here we go. April 14th, people are often overly concerned with their appearance. All right, because of this, some born on this day may be victims of fad diets, unnecessary cosmetic operations, overstrenuous exercise programs, and the like. And as an Aries person, an April 14th individual may be particularly focused on the appearance of his or her face. Not health so much, but aging itself may prove to be a problem for April 14 people. If they can accept aging and their appearance and the limitations of ebbing physical strength as they get older, they will be happier and adapt more smoothly to the changing needs of their personality. On the culinary front, April 14th people are not the best subjects for experimentation, and they do their best with a tried as well as a true diet. Very interesting, all right? Say that for a number of reasons. The health entries have just been an anomaly in and of themselves this period, all right? Typically, they'll tell you what exercises to entertain. Normally for a Mars individual, it's strenuous, vigorous. That hasn't been coming up very often, if at all, because Aries folks are doers and they tend to get the exercise they need just doing what they normally do, all right? So it's recommended that they don't exercise too hard because they might overdo it, hurt themselves. Also, typically for a Mercury individual, they get warnings of broken bones and going out and being too adventurous, all right? That didn't come up here now. That's all pretty interesting. Again, just an Aries anomaly. But let's dive into what I had to say. You might hear some of what I just said. I always burn it down here. Let's go with your health. Overly concerned with your appearance, they said, all right? I don't think vanity has presented in Aries before. And last period, ironically, it took the star qualities, as I mentioned, all right? You think that'd be something that would pop up with those individuals, even though their star kind of quality wasn't very pretentious, though they were aiming for the spotlight. They were still pretty down-to-earth people. But you're Aries 3, so you're the pioneer, all right? You're out there to try and break down, obstacles, find a new way, I would say. but it's just an interesting quality I didn't expect at all. A little bit of vanity in there. So why that is, who's to say? All right, but don't neglect your health as a whole, they said. And that's something that's been tried and true for this period. Folks aren't too concerned with it, and negligence ends up being the downfall. All right, an otherwise somewhat common affair in that respect. The focus on aging, however, that's yours alone. Pretty interesting. All right, and as far as diet, interesting again to have a tried and true diet, that traditional kind of idea, something that's like they mentioned with work, something consistent, always lined up, tried and true, so you don't plod along too much or get annoyed. But it flies in the face of a typical Mercury trait, okay? But there must be a reason. Who's to say what it is? But if nothing else, again, just try it out, all right? They said no real exercise to be spoken of, but as I said with the Aries people, hey, you're doers, you're getting your activity in, that's just enough. But if you do decide to exercise, maybe take it moderately, all right? Don't let your god of war, Mars energy, come out and break you down, okay? That said, Aries body areas of the head, neck, brain, they haven't been making much mention of how that factors in, but in a lot of the other zodiac periods they do. The things they said to be mindful of is neck issues, so see your chiropractor if you need to. Also tooth decay, surprisingly, a head area. But that only came up one day, and so did the chiropractic recommendation one day. So again, the health entries have been a bit of an anomaly, as I keep mentioning. So mind your chiropractic and your teeth there, ostensibly. That said, that's been your health. Let's move on to some advice. All right, let's make sure I'm in frame. I've been getting out of hand with that the past week. All right, there we go. Don't be afraid to take chances, they say. All right, dare to fail, dare to succeed. Interesting I brought that up. That wasn't top of mind for me. Tradition can sometimes be a collection of bad habits. Oh, I like that. Change is natural in the course of things. Everything passes sooner or later. Value honesty, not flattery. All right. I like that they put change in there too. Mercury day. And then, like I said, with the Mercury for you, it wasn't really mentioned, or it was kind of you were someone who might be averse to it. All right. Any event, probably burning it down again. All right, bear with me. I had to write it in the book, so it's kind of small. Let's see if I flub this thing. Let's get it. They said take chances and dare to fail and succeed. All right, sounds a bit like buck and tradition to me, okay? Often the advice, not necessarily for you, but for the book. But the book often suggests leaning toward the trait that's the opposite of your intrinsic natural ability. So take chances, dare fail, and succeed. Hey, if you're a conservative type, you're most likely not going to be doing that. All right, especially if you're trying to stick with tradition. Hey, I know what works. I know what I like. I'm going to stick with that. So you're erring on the tried and true. But I would say once in a while we got to shake it up a little bit, see what happens. You know what? There might be something you discover that you can tweak into a new tradition. Who's to say? What else do we have here? That ostensibly segues into the next point I wrote here. Tradition can be a collection of bad habits. Very interesting way of looking at it. E.g., the strict upbringing transitioning to one's own practices, the father-son type thing. So while it was suggested to maintain a stable situation, but change, may be suggested to maintain that stable situation, maybe. I also mentioned change being the only constants. Hey, that's a tradition in and unto itself. So be open to it. Dare to fail so that you know how to adapt to it as well. It may be a discomfort that you're not used to experiencing because you don't put yourself out there in situations where you dare to fail too much. Hey, you got to work that muscle so that you can adapt if things do change for, say, a dour downturn. Got to know how to adapt to it. Not be caught off guard too much. All right. So what else do they have? Also, as a Mercury individual, you're going to recover quickly. All right. That's something they only tend to mention with Mercury folks. They roll with the hard knocks of life and they get right back up on their feet. So even if you do fail, wouldn't worry too much about it. All right. They said value honesty and not flattery. Imagine this error on the side of your conservative nature. Flattery can be hollow and perhaps an Achilles heel that others can use to their advantage. Maybe you don't get it all that often, so when it does come, hey, a little bit of vanity in there, all right? Somebody's interested. Maybe not. All right. So err on the side of your conservative nature and tradition in that respect. It's also flattery is an earmark for dubious individuals sometimes. Okay. Lesser evolved types, perhaps, who's to say? But yeah, don't let your illusions carry you away. So I would say just be a little bit skeptical to some extent. If it's coming up for you, there must be individuals who this affected in what do you call it? In a dubious way. I can't think of the right word, but anyway, that's been your advice. Let's move on to your meditation. Oh, the words aren't coming to me today, folks. Any event, here's your meditation for your birthday. Here we go. A boat floats until it sinks. Oh, what could that mean? One more time. A boat floats until it sinks. All right. I like this one just in general. For you, I have no idea why they brought it up. A lot of times I have an idea, but not today. A boat floats until it sinks. All right, I like it. That said, even if I did have an idea, I wouldn't tell you because it's your birthday, your meditation. Wouldn't do you any good if I gave you an interpretation on it. It's just for you to think about. That said, your meditation in the can. Let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. Here we go. We pick up on them. Let's see. Your strengths, you're socially aware, you're persuasive, and you're powerful. Interesting. I don't know that I picked up on those so much, maybe in between the lines a little bit, but I would have thought traditional would be in there, if anything. Maybe a little too on the nose. That said, what could your weaknesses be? Let's see if we picked up on those. Here we go. Repressed, dissatisfied, and autocratic. Oh, interesting. They mentioned the autocratic a little bit, and even if they hadn't said that word outright, I'd say perhaps we kind of picked up on it a little bit. But repressed and dissatisfied, I don't know that I picked up on those so much, was to say. That said, I often like to say our strengths are going to help us overcome our weaknesses. So, hey, if we really need to improve upon things, just err on the side of what you're good at. But I also like to make the argument that our weaknesses can be strengths in unto themselves, so don't get rid of them altogether. Let's see if I can make my case today, assuming these strengths and weaknesses apply. It says you're socially aware. All right, how's that going to help you overcome your weaknesses? Hey, I would say you're going to be able to identify where that weakness will affect you in the grander scheme of things. And so then you can finer refine and figure out where you need to improve those things, or direct your focus. Maybe that part of it I don't need to work on too much because it won't affect things. And so you can winnow down what you need to draw immediate attention to. And not just on yourself, but in the world at large. What do I need to do? Where do I need to go? And what do I need to address? You're socially aware. You know what needs to get done. Persuasive. Hey, if you're not out there convincing people of what needs to be done, maybe you can look in the mirror and convince yourself of what needs to get done in order to improve upon your weaknesses or whatever the mission may be. So, yeah, not a lot of times we think about convincing ourselves or turning that strength in on ourselves to improve it. We're just too close to it, I imagine. So yeah, imagine persuading yourself. What else we have here? You're powerful, all right? Hey, you know what? You're going to get it done because you have the strength and the wherewithal to get after it, all right? Even if that's improving upon yourself. All right, but how can your weaknesses be strengths? All right, a lot of times I flounder on this, so let's see what I can do here. It says you're repressed. How could that possibly be a strength? All right, I said here, I had to think about it. You're compartmentalized, okay? If you can compartmentalize things, it's just like we mentioned with being socially aware and figuring out where you need to get things done, where to put things away too, how long to work on things, when to put them away. Thoughts that overcrowd your mind, shut them down when you don't need them, all right? Give them their time when you have the time to give it to them. That's what I would say is a strength of being able to be repressed. You lock things away. That said, make sure they're the right things and make sure you're opening them back up so you can give them air and release them if need be. I can see why they say it's a weakness, but consider it could be a strength if you use it the right way. Dissatisfied, how can that be a strength? I can see how it could be a weakness. It could overcome everything that you're doing and just bleed into your attitude and your behavior. But if you're dissatisfied with things, you're going to be more of a perfectionist. You're going to make sure things get done right, I would say. Or you're going to be able to identify the weaknesses in things, see where they need to be improved. So definitely a strength in that respect. but autocratic. All right, we talked about how that could arouse antagonism. How could it be a strength? Hey, you know what? Some folks need the whip crack. Okay, so I know it's not the best thing to say, but you know it's true. All right, ostensible whip crack. They need to have the ass chewed a little bit to get them going. When I was in the Marine Corps, there were folks like me. You just needed to be asked to do something, and it came across as if you were being respected. Versus some folks needed to be told outright. When you told me to do something as if I did something wrong, you were apt to get lesser commitment out of me, quite honestly, because I harbored a little bit of resentment about it. So, leadership styles being what they were, most of the time it was people barking orders and not asking. So, wasn't too proud of that. So, like I said, the autocratic thing can work for certain people who need to be told what to do and barked at. And some people, I don't know, they just get off task. They need to be put back on task. And sometimes it's that stern attitude or comportment that gets it done. All right. So it can be a strength in that respect, okay? Also, people, they get the point. They get what you want done. So I've met plenty of folks who are a little bit too ambiguous with their instructions, and so when they get a result that they don't like, in my opinion, they're the only ones to blame. And then if you ask them questions, they somehow make that your fault. You didn't understand the mission. And you can't tell them they weren't clear about it, but that's how it goes. I always ran into that issue. And then if I ask too many questions, you're asking too many questions. What's your problem? You're not very clear about stuff. Any event, that's a whole different video altogether. Leadership principles. But that said, that's been your strengths and weaknesses. Hopefully you get my point because I'm running a little long with this. But yeah, like I said, hey, don't dismiss your weaknesses altogether because they can be strengths in and to themselves. All right. So I think you get the point. That's your strengths and weaknesses. Let's move on to those born on this day. When we get into those born on this day, not only do we get to see who shares your company, but I like to take a moment to inspire folks to consider how this might translate or inspire you to start chasing after your passions or a purpose in life. And not to assume you don't have one, but I get out in the world a lot of times and meet folks who don't. And I would say that it leads to a less fulfilling life. And so I kind of wish for them that they were putting in the work to figure out what it is they want to do with their life. Because a lot of times that's hard work. Figure it out. We don't want to look in the mirror that long to do that particular kind of work. So I think this might be the perfect opportunity to put the idea or the seeds into someone's head to get them to start doing that work so that they can be jumping out of bed doing figurative or literal backflips to get into their day. Because if there's anything I can wish someone on their birthday, it's that they're chasing after a passion. Even if it's just on the weekends and your work hours, all right? Because I think that's what makes life fulfilling, all right? And drives away the depression in a lot of cases, too. That said, if you've got a passion already in your life, well, then hat I'm not wearing's off to you, all right? Let's just see who shares your company, all right? That can be interesting, too. So here we go. Let's get into it. Those born on this day. We start off with Ali Akbar Khan, I'm assuming, the Indian master Sarod player and school founder. We also have Arnold Toynbee, a British historian. Sir John Gielgud, a British Shakespearean stage film actor. A little bit of tradition seeping in here, I would say. We also have Annie M. Sullivan, a social worker. Helen Keller's teacher, it says. Loretta Lynn, a country western singer, life depicted in the film Coal Miner's Daughter. We also have Francois Duvalier, I'm assuming, Haitian dictator and Papa Doc, it says. A little bit of the authoritarian coming through there. Rod Steiger, it says, or Steiger perhaps, stage and film actor. Julie Christie, a film actress. Eric von Daniken, a writer of works on alien visitors, one of them being Chariots of the Gods. We also have Shorty Rogers, a jazz trumpeter, composer, arranger, and a band leader. Gene Ammons, jazz tenor saxophonist and a band leader. We also have Morton Stubotnik, a composer. Hermany Butos, an isolated Mexican painter, it says. James Branch Cabell, novelist of the work by the title Jurgen. We also have Marvin Miller, a Baseball Players Association executive director. And we also have Frederick von Amerling, an Austrian 19th century portrait painter. Benajid Chadli, no, I'm saying that one wrong. Algerian political leader. Well, there goes some more tradition. Apparil Mio, Millo, Millo perhaps, operatic soprano, Bradford Dillman, film actor, and finally, William Henry, the Duke of Portland's British 18th century statesman. And I'll tell you what, folks, I don't think I recognized a single name in there, despite the fact that I butchered all of them probably. I said, let's make up from my side. Not done in malice. It's just the butchering's done because Hooked on Phonics doesn't often work for me, especially with foreign names there. That's Loretta Lynn. I recognize that one. But that said, I would say the field of play is wide open for you to make your own mark, despite the fact the book's already been written, right? But take the point home, all right? You can find your own purpose and carve out your own place and be doing figurative and literal backflips out of bed, all right? Like I said, if I can wish anything for you on your birthday, it's that you're chasing after that. So chase after it, all right? That said, that essentially rounds out your birthday reading, the day of tradition, all right? But that said, your season is spring. Your sign, once again, is Aries, of the Aries III period specifically, the pioneer. And your quality and element is Cardinal fire. And this has been April 14th, the day of tradition. Don't know that we associated the deer with the crown collar, but hey, maybe that kind of smacks the tradition with the crown. Who knows? That's it. This has been, like I said, Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Used Elfers. I have an affiliate link for this book down in the description, right above a personal birthday message I like to put together for the birthday boys and girls. So check those out if you're interested. This makes an excellent coffee table book, bound to get the conversation started for better or worse if you're hosting a party. So break it out and you will not be disappointed. Though the folks you read the birthday to may be, who's to say, all right? But you know what? The party's going to get going right and leave people talking when they do. So check it out if you're interested. That said, book having been related, that's not what's important here. Like I said at the top, wishing you a happy birthday. That's what's important. So once again, you heard it here. Happy birthday, all right? And for everybody else who joined us, hey, I hope you enjoyed yourselves and you join us for your birthday reading, all right? And once again, like I said at the top, get out there, let the universe show you it's with you on your side, and see what it will cook up for you and put in your path, all right? It's there with you if you're willing to take the time and put the faith in and look in, all right? You never know what surprises are in store. So lean in with the tradition. Don't be afraid to change. We'll make sure you ain't changing too much, it sounded like. I don't know. Got a little mumble mouth with those concepts, conflicting with each other, Mars and Mercury. But hey, once again, you heard it here. Happy birthday. Take care.